We take you to the Western Cape, where our reporter Athi Mtongana is standing by outside the house of the late former President F.W. de Klerk. Athi, as we touch base with you today, certainly a very devastating day for the de Klerk family.
Definitely a devastating day for the F.W. de Klerk family as well as the foundation. Dave coming out to say, well, he doesn't think anyone from the foundation at this stage can actually come on camera other than just confirming the news through the press statement that they released as a foundation, expressing their sadness following the passing of the former state president. And the last apartheid president, F.W. de Klerk, was standing outside of his house. We actually, Tammy, just saw a Viano Mercedes hearse looking like vehicle driving into his home. I'm going to briefly move out of shot so I can show you the little bit of activity that is currently taking place at his home. See, the gate is perfectly open so you can see that white Viano hearse that just drove in. We are assuming that it is here to fetch his body. Those reports are unconfirmed, but I can tell you that that particular vehicle that just drove into the F.W. de Klerk family household is indeed a hearse. So at any moment now, they could be taking his body. We understand that it could possibly, Tammy, still be inside. We know that he passed away, of course, as a result of suffering from cancer for many years. The foundation, of course, announcing that the cancer that he was diagnosed with affects the lining of the lungs. They announced this in June this year. F.W. de Klerk had taken over, as you know, from P.W. Botha as the head of the National Party in February 1989, and the following year he announced he was removing the ban on parties that included former President Mr. Mandela from prison. His actions are said to have really helped in the transitioning and the end of apartheid in South Africa, and he became one of the country's two deputy presidents after the multi-party elections in 1994 that saw Mr. Mandela becoming the president. He shared the Nobel Peace Prize with former president, first black president in the country, Mandela, in 1993. However, his role in the transition to democracy was highly contested. Last year, he became embroiled in a row in which he was accused of playing down the seriousness of apartheid. We know that he later apologized over that matter. So this is the activity that is currently taking place outside of his home. He is survived by his wife and children as well as grandchildren, Tammy. So as you can see, some law enforcement officials, some even from private security companies coming in. We saw a member of the South African police as well. He was also here, but not in blue uniform. He is also part of the law enforcement that has been deployed to the former president's home, F.W. de Klerk. We just want to continue then bringing you these visuals because this is the activity that we are witnessing outside of his home soon after the foundation announcing the passing of F.W. de Klerk. Again, that Viano Mercedes hearse driving in is an indication from our side, Tammy, that it could be here to retrieve his body following the announcement of his passing.
Athi, I do understand that it's still very early days, but have you seen any people coming through to the family house, maybe to already start paying their condolences and paying tribute?
At this stage, Tammy, it is still very unclear, but there are a couple of vehicles that are parked outside of his home, which could be an indication that there are some family members who are inside. Like I said, he is survived by his wife, children as well as grandchildren. At this stage, even neighbors have come out in shock to actually witness what is currently unfolding. We see vehicles with blue lights around here, Tammy, which would seemingly then form part of the convoy that would lead the hearse outside of F.W. de Klerk's home. Just speaking to some of the neighbors around here, Tammy, they were telling us that the man was wheelchair bound. You may know, of course, that he had been suffering from cancer for quite a number of time, and so he's been wheelchair bound. And so, but one thing that they can recall with him is that he could be able to articulate anything that he would want to say. I mean, they say his voice was still very strong, and I mean, he was able to recall everything around him. An 85-year-old man who was still very much aware of his surroundings. However, he was wheelchair bound and was suffering from cancer. At this stage, we're looking at the vehicles that are surrounding his homestead. It looks like they're about to move with the hearse that just drove inside. The FW de Klerk Foundation still very shaken by this news, unable to come on record, on camera, to speak about his passing, but certainly confirming his death. Mr. de Klerk was the head of state between September 1989 and May 1994. In 1990, he announced he was releasing anti-apartheid leader, former president, first black president in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, leading to multi-party polls in 1994. FW de Klerk, as you know, was aged 85, but tremendously suffered in terms of his health. He had cancer, and a cancer that particularly affects the lining of the lungs. This was announced by the foundation, of course, in June last year. So what we are seeing right now is activity around that hearse. Looks like they will at any minute now be taking his body out and leaving with it. We're not sure what the destination is, of course, but mortuary around Cape Town or not, but rest assured they will be taking him out following the announcement of his passing. There is a huge media contingent outside of his home. There are vehicles with blue lights that are already standing at Fresnaye. We are in Sea Point, where his home is. There are vehicles with blue lights that are stationed outside, waiting for that hearse to come out. And even behind these vehicles with blue lights on are traffic officers who've already closed the road for no vehicles to come into this particular street as they try to conduct this process of taking his body outside of his home. There we go, Tammy, there you have it. That Vienna coming out with the former state president, F.W. de Klerk, passing away at age 85. De Klerk was head of state between 1989 and 1994. This hearse, Tammy, we understand at this stage, is carrying the former president, F.W. de Klerk. I'm going to ask my colleague if he can zoom in to show you that indeed, even though it is quite dim, we understand that his body is being carried away. And these vehicles then following behind with blue lights, traffic officers also following, trailing behind, transporting the body of the former state president. And of course, inside his home, staff members, we can see hugging each other. Staff members obviously showing some sadness following the passing of the former state president. The helper here, whose name we understand to be Lucy, had her and her sister work at the de Klerk household, assisting them in terms of household issues. We know that they've been working here for a number of years, and so they also have displayed some form of sadness following the passing of F.W. de Klerk. This is the activity, Tammy, that is taking place, and as you have seen, we understand that they have now taken his body outside of his homestead.
Athi Mtongana coming to us live from the Western Cape, outside the home of the late former president F.W. de Klerk, who was born on the 18th of March 1936 in Mayfair and passed away on the 11th of November 2021.